So what's up, guys? Many beginners new to immersion learning will always ask the question, how many new cards a day should I do? If you look at Reddit, look at Discord, this question is asked, every week, every day. It seems that beginners always want to know what is the perfect amount of cards to do. So I'm going to answer this question based on my own personal experiences. So the number one thing people need to get into their heads is that SRS is a supplement. Okay, it isn't the main diet. It is the supplement. Okay, it's the vitamins. So immersion is the fruits and veggies. Okay, so if you're not getting your fruits and veggies, it doesn't matter how many vitamins you're eating, you're not going to get the right amount of nutrition, right? So immersion should always be the priority. SRS is just there to help, because technically speaking, you don't need the SRS, right? You can just learn through immersion. So the SRS is just there to help speed up the process a little bit. And then another thing people need to understand is that just because some dude on the internet says 10K is this miraculously beautiful number, it doesn't mean that once you reach 10K cards, that you'll be fluent. That's just not how it works. Okay, immersion is obviously more important. So then you shouldn't be trying to chase this magical number. So obviously, but then on the flip side, doing one card a day is obviously leaving too many gains on the table. But doing 1,000 cards a day is obviously impractical. So there has to be a middle ground for people where it is practical, but it can also reap the benefits of the SRS. So in my opinion, this question about how many questions you should be doing per day is a bit misleading, because I think the real question people should be asking is, how long should I spend on the SRS per day? Because the amount of time you spend on the SRS can depend on so many different factors, like how many new cards a day you're doing, your particular interval settings, your personal mental abilities, or even just your Anki skills, right? But in my opinion, it's a highly personal question of how much time you want to spend on Anki per day. But I think the two most important factors for answering this question is, at what stage of your immersion journey are you in, and how much do you enjoy Anki? So with regards to what stage of your immersion journey you're on, if you're a beginner, you can probably get away with doing a lot less SRS. So because everything is new, right? And so a lot of the intermediates don't realize this, but when you're a beginner, everything is brand new to you, right? So the very common vocab that appear a lot will just stick out like a sore thumb. It's just there. So stuff like kaja, stuff like that, you hear that a lot, and then you probably don't need to put stuff like that in Anki, because you hear that a lot. All right? And also beginners also well, obviously they don't know much about the language, so the potential complexity of the cards that they can make is going to be pretty low, right? Because I mean obviously you can't really learn a language if all the cards you're making is, this is a table, this is an apple, this is a calculator, right? You can't just you won't be able to see how the vocabs are used in context, and it'll just become brute memorization. So beginners can definitely get away with doing less, but more advanced learners, and also I think this is the stage where I'm in, or sort of in an intermediate phase, is where I can still acquire vocab from pure immersion, but a lot of times when I'm sentence mining, I will see stuff like, oh, so that's what it is, that's what it meant. So there will be a lot of stuff where it starts to become more difficult to acquire purely from immersion, and so the role of the SRS becomes more important, because you'll be able to acquire more, I'll say, more hidden vocab. So if you're more advanced, you should probably do a bit more, but if you're a beginner, you can probably get away with doing less. Then how much you enjoy Anki, and your mentality approaching the SRS is also quite important. So I'm not trying to stereotype here, but there's a particular demographic when it comes to these Japanese immersion learners, right? They're all like, I have to marry my anime waifu, right? So they go on these crazy Anki streaks, right? So I remember the interview Matt had with Chris, the dude with the cool afro, right? So he said he was doing like what 50 cards a day. He was spending like 2 hours a day on Anki, right? But then this sort of very more hardcore people, they tend to have more time to spend on immersion, and so even though they're spending an absurd amount of time on Anki, they're also spending a proportionately more absurd time on immersion. So the ratio actually evens out by itself, right? In terms of the amount of time spent on Anki in relation to how much immersion they're doing. And so, in my personal experience, I've done the 50 cards a day thing for about a few weeks, but I found that the amount of reviews I had to do, paired with the time spent just on sentence mining itself, was just impractical, right? And so, but then so on the flip side, if you're not very hardcore, you're less hardcore like me. You actually have things to do, like school or work. So I don't want to spend my precious free time just sitting in front of a computer spamming the spacebar, right? So I prefer to be immersing, which is way more enjoyable, infinitely more enjoyable than Anki, doing just your Anki, right? And so if you're less hardcore, you should probably do less, because you want to be prioritizing the fun things and the good things, right? So immersion ticks both of those boxes, and so you probably don't want to be doing so much time on Anki, because you don't want to burn out and lose interest in the immersion method, right? So I currently do 25 cards a day, and so the time it takes for review and sentence mining takes just slightly less than an hour. So because I'm currently on break, so I have a bit more time, a bit more free time to do Anki. So 1 hour is okay for me. But then when I have to go back to school, then I probably need to because when the semester starts, I probably won't have much time. So I think 30 minutes a day. I might reduce my new card count to maybe 20 or 15, because I don't want to be spending my morning just on Anki, right? And so but also there's other people in the Discords. They do about 10 cards a day. They spend very little time on Anki, and they don't spend much time on sentence mining too. They just pick up sentences from their immersion anyways. So yeah. So then so for beginners, because they haven't accumulated much experience yet, I probably want to give some general recommendations that I wish I did too. So I think when you're first beginning, 5 to 10 new cards a day is plenty for beginners. 10 is already too much. So I think at the lower end, around 5 new cards per day is good for beginners. And so you should be spending maximum 15 to 30 minutes a day on Anki. The 95% of your time should be spent just immersing, because through immersion you'll be able to pick out a lot of the common vocab, and it's obviously much more fun. And so the question is, when do I know when to add more cards? Now this is an interesting question. So I think you'll know when you need to add more cards when you know. That's it. And so everybody, as always, keep immersing.